I've just been kicked out of my own home. No warning, no goodbye. I'm 18 years old, and I'm standing in the living room, my belongings packed in boxes around me, as my stepdad and mom tell me I need to leave. It's like a bad dream, one where nothing makes sense, and yet everything is so real. My stepdad, Andrew, says it's time for me to move out because they need to make room for their baby. His baby, the one he's been so thrilled about for the last few months. As for me, well, I'm just in the way apparently. The words freeloader and parasite have been thrown around, and I can't quite wrap my head around it. I'd always known my family wasn't perfect, but this feels like betrayal. My parents had never been the picture of happiness, but I thought we had a somewhat functional relationship. My mom had her issues, mostly with drinking, and my dad did his best, even if he was never truly around emotionally. There was always tension, always something simmering underneath the surface. But I didn't expect this. I didn't expect Andrew, of all people, to be the one to push me out. It's almost funny in a tragic sort of way. This is the same guy I caught my mom with years ago, the one who shattered the last bit of trust I had left in her. And now, he's here, standing in my house, making decisions like he owns the place. I remember the day my dad passed away, and how everything changed after that. The will, the house, the money, everything I thought I'd inherit, everything I thought would give me a stable future. And now it feels like it's all slipping away from me, just like that. My mum never even bothered to care. I used to think she'd change, that things would get better. But no, it's just the same cycle repeating itself. As I gather the few things I care about, photos, books, my favourite hoodie, I can feel the lump in my throat. It's hard to keep it together. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go to my grandmother's house, but I have no choice. My feet feel heavy, and I don't even know what to say. My mum's standing there, acting like everything is fine, like she didn't just destroy the last bit of connection I had with her. Andrew, of course, is thrilled. He's grinning like this is some victory for him. Before I leave, I turn to my mum, trying to keep my voice steady. I thought you would be different. I thought you'd care. But she just shrugs, like I'm overreacting. I hate this. I hate how everything feels like a joke, like my life is being dictated by people who have never taken the time to understand me. I want to scream, but I don't. I just grab my stuff, head for the door, and call an Uber. I don't even say goodbye. I sat in the Uber, staring out the window, the city blurring past me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't bother answering. It was probably my mom. Again. Since she kicked me out, she'd been sending these long, guilt-laden texts about how difficult this transition was going to be for her, and how she couldn't believe I was doing this to her during her pregnancy. I had to fight the urge to throw my phone out the window. She really thought I'd just sit there and let her manipulate me again, as if I didn't remember everything she'd put me through. When I arrived at my grandmother's house, I just dropped my bags in the hallway and collapsed onto the couch. It was quiet here, calmer, the kind of peace I hadn't felt in so long. Grandma always knew how to make me feel safe, how to put my mind at ease. But even in the calm of her living room, I could feel the weight of everything I'd just left behind. My family, my parents, the house, everything felt so far away now. Grandma must have heard the car, because she came into the room almost immediately. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down next to me and put a hand on my shoulder. Want to talk about it, sweetie? I shook my head, trying to hold it together. There's nothing to talk about. They just kicked me out. Like I'm nothing. Grandma sighed, a low, sad sound, and I felt her hand tighten for a moment. You know that's not true, don't you? I wanted to argue, wanted to yell, but the exhaustion of the past few months, maybe even years, settled in. I just nodded and wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. Did they say anything else? She asked gently. Yeah, they said I'm a freeloader, that Andrew needed to make room for the baby. I could feel the anger bubbling up again, but I kept it inside. It felt too raw. I guess I'm just in the way. I don't matter. Grandma didn't respond right away. She was probably trying to figure out what to say that wouldn't sound too much like pity. Finally, she spoke, her voice firm but kind. You do matter. Don't ever let them make you think otherwise. What they've done to you is cruel, and it's not your fault. We'll figure this out. You've got a place here, okay? I nodded, but something in the pit of my stomach told me I couldn't stay here forever. I had to figure out what I was going to do next. I couldn't just rely on Grandma. I needed to be independent. But the idea of going back to that house, my house, fighting for what was mine, made me sick. How could they treat me like this? The next day my phone rang again. I almost didn't pick it up, but something told me it was important. Hello? Where are you? It was my mum's voice, sharp and accusing. You think you can just leave and not tell me what's going on? We're family, you know. You can't just walk out like that. I bit my lip, holding back the words that were ready to pour out. I'm not coming back. You can't treat me like that, Mom. You don't get to just push me out when it's convenient for you. She went silent for a beat. Then, in a cold voice, you're being unreasonable. This is about the baby. I'm trying to build a future for us. You can't just expect me to keep everything the same. I'm not the one who's being unreasonable. I shot back, my voice shaking with anger. You're the one who never cared about me. You've been drinking, lying, cheating, everything but being a mother. Now you want to throw me out because of Andrew, because of some new guy who has nothing to do with me? There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer, but no less manipulative. I'm just asking you to understand. This isn't easy for me either. You don't get to act like the victim here. You've never understood me, I snapped. This is your choice. You and Andrew made your decision. I'm not going to be a part of it. I hung up before she could say anything else. But I didn't feel better. I didn't feel anything but empty. That conversation had just made everything worse. She hadn't changed. She didn't even see me. Not really. Just another problem to deal with. The days passed, and I tried to focus on other things. Anything to distract me from the chaos back home. I kept busy with applications for university, looked for jobs, tried to put the pieces of my life back together. But every time I thought I had a grip on things, something would remind me of them, of my mum's indifference, Andrew's presence. I felt like I was drowning in their neglect. Then one afternoon, after coming back from a job interview, I saw the one thing I was trying to avoid. A text from my mum. We need to talk. I'm asking you to come home. You don't belong here with your grandmother. This isn't your place. I stared at the screen, the words burning into my brain. You don't belong here, she'd said. My hands trembled as I read it over and over again, the anger and hurt building up again. I texted back, not thinking, just reacting. I don't belong there either. You made that clear. Then almost immediately she called. I knew it was coming. Why are you being like this? She demanded when I picked up. Why don't you ask Andrew? He's the one who decided I was in the way. I could hear her trying to hold back her anger. She had no idea how to respond. You can't just walk away from your family, she said, this time with a tinge of desperation. You'll regret this. I'm already regretting every day I've spent trying to make it work with you. And for the first time, it felt like I was finally standing up for myself. Really standing up. I wasn't backing down anymore. The phone call came a week later, just as I was sitting on the couch trying to finish a job application. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. It was my mom. What now? I asked, already feeling my patience wear thin. Her voice was tight, controlled, like she was trying to sound calm, but the anger was there, simmering just below the surface. I need you to come to the house, right now. It's important. I felt my heart race. She had no idea how exhausted I was, how much I hated the sound of her voice now, but part of me, just a small part, was still hoping for some kind of reconciliation. So, I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door, not knowing what I was walking into. When I arrived, the house felt cold, even though it was a sunny afternoon. Andrew was already standing in the doorway, looking pleased with himself, as always. You're late, he said, barely looking up from his phone. I didn't answer, just pushed past him into the living room, where my mum was sitting on the couch, her face unreadable. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice low. I stayed standing, my arms crossed, waiting for whatever manipulation or empty apology was coming next. I've made a decision, she continued, her gaze flicking nervously to Andrew. We're going to sell the house. All of it. The money's going to go into a new place for me and Andrew. A fresh start. I froze. What? My voice was a whisper, but the words hit me like a slap. Yeah, Andrew piped up, his smug grin creeping back into his voice. You'll get your share when it's all sorted. But for now, we need to take care of things here. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were going to sell my dad's house, the one I inherited. The house that had been my only connection to him. The house that had been mine, legally, since his death. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling with rage. You're selling my house? Without even talking to me. After everything you've done? My mum shot me a pleading look, but her voice was unyielding. It's the only way. I need to provide for Andrew and the baby. You'll get your share, don't worry about it. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears. I don't want my share. I want my house. I don't care about the money. You're not taking this from me. This was my dad's, and it's mine now. Andrew laughed, a low, mocking sound. You're being childish. You can't just live here forever, you know. Time to move on. We've been more than generous letting you stay here this long. It was like a switch flipped inside me. The anger I'd been holding back for months, for years, finally broke free. I didn't care anymore. My mom wasn't going to win this time. She wasn't going to control me. Not again. No, I said, my voice steady and cold. This is my house, and you're not touching it. I'm not going to just stand by while you sell everything my dad left me. You don't get to decide what happens to it. Andrew's smile faltered, but my mum's eyes flashed with something darker, something I hadn't seen before, a look that told me she wasn't planning to back down. You don't understand, do you? She snapped, standing up from the couch. This is my life now, and you need to accept it. You're not a little kid anymore, and I don't owe you anything. I've done everything I could for you, and this is how you repay me? I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. Not anymore. I'm done, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of heartbreak and determination. I've been trying to make this work for so long, but I can't do it anymore. You never cared about me. You cared about yourself. And I'm not going to let you destroy everything just because you can't let go of your selfishness. For the first time, I turned and walked toward the door, not looking back. Where are you going? My mum's voice was laced with anger, desperation, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I walked out of that house, the only home I'd ever known, and slammed the door behind me. As the sound of the door shutting echoed in my ears, I knew I had made the hardest decision of my life. I wasn't going to let my mum and Andrew take everything from me. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I called a locksmith and arranged for them to come change the locks. I wasn't going to let them back in, not without permission. The house was mine now, and I was done letting them treat me like a stranger in my own home. As I stood outside, my phone buzzed again. It was my mom. But this time, I didn't care. I blocked her number. It was over. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The first few days after I changed the locks were the hardest. My phone never stopped buzzing with texts from my mum, calls from Andrew, and even messages from people who had heard about the situation. Everyone had an opinion. My phone screen lit up constantly, but I didn't answer. I couldn't bear to hear their voices anymore. The silence felt almost like a relief, a brief moment of peace before the storm. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to last. I wasn't naive enough to think they'd just walk away. They were furious, angry that I'd finally stood up for myself. The knock on the door came 2 days later. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee cooling in front of me. It was almost like I could feel the tension before it even reached me. When I opened the door, I found my mom and Andrew standing on the porch, their faces twisted in disbelief and anger. "Let us in," Andrew said, voice low and dangerous. "We need to talk." I took a step back, my heart hammering. I didn't want to do this, didn't want to confront them, but I knew I had to. I wasn't backing down now. Not after everything they'd done. "No," I said, my voice firm as I crossed my arms. "There's nothing left to talk about. You don't get to just waltz back in here after everything you've put me through." Andrew's eyes narrowed, his posture stiffening as he tried to control his temper. "You're making a huge mistake, you know. You've really gone too far this time. This isn't just about the house. You're destroying your relationship with your mother." I could feel my anger rising. "No, you're the ones who destroyed it. All these years, you've only cared about yourselves. I've spent my entire life trying to make you happy, trying to keep the peace, and you've thrown it all away." My mum, who had been standing quietly behind Andrew, stepped forward. "You don't get to talk to me like that. I'm your mother. I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me." I felt the sting of her words, but there was a flicker of something inside me, a realization that I didn't owe her anything. Not anymore. Not after everything she'd done. "I didn't ask for anything from you," I said, my voice low but steady. "I didn't ask for the lies, the neglect, the manipulation. You never gave me anything that actually mattered. You're not my mother anymore. You're just someone who caused me pain." The words stung. They cut through me like a knife. But as I said them, I felt this strange, unfamiliar weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting out of hurt. I was taking control of my own life. Andrew's face flushed with rage. "You're making a mistake, kid. Don't think this is the end. I'll make sure you regret this." I stood my ground. "I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not afraid of you. If you want to make me regret this, go ahead. But it won't change the fact that you don't get to walk into my life and destroy everything anymore." My mom turned away, her back stiff, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. It wasn't just anger, it was guilt. She wasn't fooling me anymore. Without another word, they both turned and left, walking down the driveway with their heads down. I watched them go, a strange mix of relief and sadness washing over me. I had finally drawn the line, and I knew there was no going back. But as they disappeared from view, I felt a hollowness settle in. Despite everything, they were still my family. And even though I knew I'd done the right thing, I couldn't help but wonder if I was making a mistake too. Was I being too harsh? Was there any part of me that still needed them? I shook my head, pushing those thoughts away. No, I had done what I needed to do. For myself, for my future. The next few days were filled with action. I started applying for more jobs, looking into places to rent, figuring out what my next step would be. But amidst all the planning, I felt a deep sense of uncertainty creeping back in. What if they tried to take me to court? What if they tried to fight me for the house? I couldn't let those thoughts consume me. I knew what I needed to do. Keep moving forward. I wasn't going to be stuck in the past any longer. I had a life to build, and I was determined to do it on my terms. I called Shirley that evening, needing someone to talk to.
"Are you okay?" she asked when she picked up, sensing the tension in my voice. "Not really," I admitted, "but I'm not going back."
"I can't. I'm doing what's right for me, and for once, it feels like I'm in control." "I'm proud of you," Shirley said, her voice warm with encouragement. "You've been through so much, and you deserve better than that. I'm here for you, no matter what happens." I smiled, the warmth of her words comforting me more than I had expected. I wasn't alone. I had Shirley. and I had myself. As I laid down that night, my mind racing with the uncertainty of what would come next, I felt a small flicker of hope. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I knew I was the one writing it. I wasn't afraid anymore. The weeks following my confrontation with my mum and Andrew were a blur of uncertainty and change. I focused all my energy on making a life for myself, on creating something that didn't have to be tied to the chaos and manipulation of my past. I found a small apartment not far from the city centre, one that felt like mine in every sense. It was simple, modest, but it was mine. Every corner of it was my own decision, my own space. It wasn't a house I'd inherited, but it felt like a fresh start, a place where I could breathe and be myself. I started working a part-time job at a local cafe, a place where the pace was easy enough to allow me to focus on my goals, but busy enough to keep my mind off the constant worry of what my mom and Andrew were doing. I kept my head down, focused on paying bills and saving for the future, feeling proud of how far I'd come. My routine began to settle into a comforting rhythm. Even though there were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I'd made the right decision, I kept pushing forward. Shirley was my rock through it all. She helped me unpack, brought me food when I was too exhausted to cook, and always had a smile on her face, even when I didn't feel like smiling. She had this way of making everything seem more manageable. Slowly but surely, I started finding joy in the small things again. The first time I sat in my new apartment, sipping coffee with the sunlight spilling through the windows, I realized how much I had been holding myself back for years, and how much freedom I had gained in just a short time. As the months passed, I continued to build my new life. I began taking evening classes, hoping to finish my degree. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, but I knew that education was the key to unlocking more opportunities. Every small victory, every completed task, felt like another step away from the person I used to be. A person who was always trying to please, trying to fit into a family that would never give me the support I needed. The day I finished my first semester of classes, I celebrated with Shirley and her family. They treated me like I was one of their own, and for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I realized that sometimes, family isn't just blood. It's the people who stand by you, who love you unconditionally, and who help you rise when the world is trying to tear you down. I didn't hear from my mum for a while, but then one evening, as I was preparing dinner, I saw her name flash on my phone. My heart skipped a beat. Part of me still wanted to believe that things could be fixed, that she could change. I hesitated, but I picked up the phone. "Hello," I said, my voice steady despite the nervous flutter in my chest. I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I've made so many mistakes," she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "I'm sorry. I should have been there for you. You deserved so much better." I swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. "I appreciate that, but I can't go back. I can't pretend like nothing happened." "I understand," she said quietly. I wanted you to know that I regret how I treated you. And I'll never stop trying to be better, even if you don't want me in your life anymore." The conversation ended with a simple promise from both of us to keep moving forward. I didn't know if it would lead to a full reconciliation, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the pressure to fix everything. I had finally accepted that I didn't need her approval to live a happy, fulfilled life. I had to be my own person, separate from her mistakes and her failures. As time passed, I threw myself into planning my wedding to Shirley. The idea of a celebration, a day that was entirely mine, was more important to me than I had ever imagined. I wasn't planning it for anyone else. It wasn't about making peace with my parents or getting their approval. It was about celebrating the life I had built and the love I had found. The day of our wedding, I looked around at the people who had supported me, at the life I had created on my own terms, and I realized just how far I had come. I had stood up for myself, fought for what was mine, and walked away from the toxicity that had defined so much of my past. I had learned to respect myself, to set boundaries, and to put my own happiness first. As I stood there with Shirley, our hands intertwined, I knew that this was just the beginning. This was the first of many new chapters in my life, and I was ready to face them all. No more living in the shadow of my parents' mistakes. No more allowing others to dictate my worth. I was finally living for myself, and for the first time, I truly felt free. Story 2. Madison's tale begins with her parents' marriage. Besides being my dad, he was more. His divorce when Kayla was 2 made him Kayla's father. Looking back, our family was unusual. Unlike the evil stepmother stereotype in movies, my mum got along with Kayla's parents. They'd call, plan visits, and have coffee. At first, Kayla came over on weekends and vacations and everything was fine. We linked immediately despite being stepsisters and close in age. We played, shared secrets, and did sister things for hours. We used to make blanket forts in the living room and watch movies late, attempting to hide our laughter from our parents. As we aged, things changed. We slowly drifted apart throughout high school due to new acquaintances and hobbies. I saw Kayla was becoming less neat after finding her own crowd. Kayla, could you please pick up your stuff from the bathroom? I asked, attempting to hide my annoyance. Yeah, I'll do it later, she said, staring at her phone. But later never came. Mum eventually told me to clean up after her. Madison, honey, just take care of it, Mum said. She's our guest after all. I grunted and did it, but a tiny seed of bitterness grew each time. Still, I kept quiet. What else can I do? Even then, I was responsible and understood the value of peace in our blended family. After high school, I embraced college. I worked hard, studied harder, and saved every dime from my part-time employment. Mum's parents, my grandparents, often told me they were pleased of my independence. After college, I got an excellent job with perks and scheduled hours. Pay was good enough to start looking for a place to rent. My funds grew as I saved a portion of my salary each month. Some way my parents supported me. They brought home-cooked meals and other household things to my rental flat. My grandparents made my home ownership dream come true. I bought my own apartment with my funds, their gracious donation, and my parents' renovation and furniture support. The first night at my new apartment, I stood in the living room, breathing in the fresh paint smell and feeling like I'd made it. Everything was perfect, including the antique dining table my great-grandmother left me and the pricey wine I'd saved for a special occasion. Mum called 6 months after moving in. Honey, I need to ask you a favour, she murmured over the phone, in that sweet, deliberate tone she employs for major things. It's about Kayla. My stomach tightened. What about her? Isn't it great that she found a job in the city? Mum hesitated. But she needs a place to stay while she gets settled. Just for a couple of months. Tightened my phone grasp. Mum, she can't afford rent yet, and you have that spare room, Mum said. It would mean so much to all of us. You know how hard it is starting out. I closed my eyes and remembered all the times Kayla left our house looking like a whirlwind when we were younger. Maybe she'd matured. Maybe she changed. Only 2 months, right? Okay, I said. But just for 2 months. Oh, sweetie, thank you. You're such a good sister, Mum said. Kayla will be there tomorrow. Kayla arrived the next day with 4 huge suitcases and began unpacking, that is, flinging her clothing everywhere. Within 1 hour, my clean living room looked like a garment bomb went off. That night, I returned home from work to filthy dishes in the sink and half-eaten takeaway cartons on the counter. Kayla watched TV on my couch. Hey, could you wash your dishes? I requested, attempting to speak clearly. I'll get to it, she responded, staring at the screen. She never did it. Day after day, things worsened. I entered my closet one morning to find many beloved clothing missing. Later, I found them crumpled on Kayla's floor. What the hell, Kayla? I shouted. Why are you taking my clothes without asking? Rolling her eyes. Come on, we're the same size. Don't be so uptight about it. We're sisters, remember? I whispered. Sisters ask permission, but she left. Food was the last straw. Never did I mind cooking enough for leftovers at work. However, I returned home to find everything I'd made the night before gone, and nothing prepared. Kayla, you can't keep eating all the food without contributing, I said one night, staring at my empty fridge. Annoyed, she looked up from her phone. I'm a guest here, Madison. You're the host. You're supposed to take care of your guests. Besides, this isn't even my kitchen. Guest or not, help out, I said. Whatever, she shrugged. If you're going to be so weird about it, I'll just order takeout. Standing there watching her navigate through delivery apps raised my blood pressure. Not what I signed up for. I kept hearing my mum's voice. You're such a good sister. Whenever I considered confronting her more seriously. 2 weeks into this horror of cohabitation, I was counting down the days until I could have my place back. After a hard day at work, all I wanted to do was come home, heat up some leftovers, and fall on my couch. Instead, I entered darkness. I believed Kayla had gone out for the night, giving me some peace and quiet. The flickering light from my living room caught my attention. I stopped dead in my tracks at the corner. Kayla and a stranger sat at my dining table, which I rarely used because I loved my great-grandmother's antique dining set. Candles were around to create a romantic mood. They were leaning in, laughing and kissing between mouthful of takeout on my family treasures. My blood boiled over the open bottle on the table. My bottle, my costly wine, saved for a special occasion, is half empty between these strangers. I turned on the light. What the hell is this? Kayla jumped and rolled her eyes when she saw me. Oh my God, Madison, you scared us. I pointed at the gentleman, who was now annoyed, and asked, Who is this? And why are you using my great-grandmother's china? And that wine was expensive and saved for a special occasion. This is Derek, Kayla remarked nonchalantly, as if nothing was wrong. And this is a special occasion. It's our 3rd date. I don't care if it's your wedding dinner. You have no right to bring strangers into my home without asking, and you definitely have no right to use my things without permission. Derek throat cleared. Hey, we're trying to have a romantic evening here. Could you give us some privacy? Maybe go grab coffee somewhere or stay at a friend's place tonight. Hearing this was unbelievable. Excuse me? Yes. Kayla said, placing her arm around Derek's shoulders. We need some alone time. This is rude to crash a date. Crash a date? This is my flat. Come on, sis, Kayla complained. Don't be lazy. We want quality time together. Quality time. Get out. I pointed to Derek. Leave now. Or, Derek grinned. Or I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing. You wouldn't, Kayla gasped. Try me. I dialed my phone. Derek rose up and grabbed his jacket, losing his grin. This is absurd. I'm leaving. Derek, wait, Kayla called after him as he left, glaring at me. Thanks, Madison. Thanks for spoiling everything. She grabbed her bag and went out after him, slamming the door so hard my photographs rattled. My phone called early the next morning with Mom's name on it, and I knew it wasn't good. You could? Your sister, she began before I could say hi. Mom, let me explain. Explain? You shamed that girl in front of her date. How did you threaten to arrest her? I squeezed my nose bridge. Did she say she used great-grandma's china? Or that she opened my pricey wine without asking? Oh, Madison, Mom sighed. When did you become so selfish? So arrogant? Your sister is attempting to live here, and you're treating her like a criminal. She brought a complete stranger into my home without... She's sad and needs family support. It's obvious you're too busy to notice. Mum hung up before I could defend myself, leaving me feeling angry and hurt. An hour later, Kayla's mom called, and I didn't have long to comprehend. And she said, Madison, we need to talk about your behavior. My conduct, I laughed. What about Kayla's behavior? You've changed since buying that apartment. Be arrogant, selfish. That's unfair. Not fair. What's unfair? Did you forget when you and your mother moved here? Our house hosted you for 2 weeks. Kayla and I respected you both. No one kicked you out or threatened to call the police. It was absolutely different, I argued. We didn't damage your house or utilize your stuff without permission. Every day I'm fatigued from work and cleaning up Kayla instead of relaxing. She does no dishes or laundry. You're being too severe with her, Kayla's mum interrupted. She says living with you is hard, and you're biased against her. Madison, these are minor. You should quit worrying about anything. Little things? Regarding basic respect. She didn't appreciate my work, or respect my home or stuff. Your sister, if she doesn't like living with you, she can leave your apartment now. The other end of the line gasped. I see. Kayla's mom's voice froze. I'll tell your parents. Don't consider this over. The telephone went silent, and I sat there shivering with rage. How had I become the villain? All I wanted was respect and regard in my own home. Was that too much to ask? A few hours later, Mum's name flashed on the screen again. I almost didn't answer, but I knew ignoring her would make things worse. I hovered over the decline button before answering, bracing myself for what was coming. Your problem? No greeting. Just hung up with Kayla's mother. She's distraught. I collapsed on my couch, a headache forming. Mom, do you know how hard I've fought to keep this relationship with her? My relationship with your father's ex-wife has always been good. That makes me proud. Now you're spoiling everything. Did you realize that divorced families rarely get along like we do? Am I ruining everything? You promised Kayla wouldn't meddle with my life, Mum. I sat up straight, my voice rising. You said she'd work all day and we'd hardly see her. Guess what? After 2 weeks, she hasn't had a job interview. Not one. She's looking. She's not. She stays home all day, trashing my apartment and inviting strangers. Want to know her genuine actions? She watches TV and orders takeout on my couch all day. She won't wash a dish, cook or wash her clothing. I return from work to turmoil every day. What's it like to return home from a long day to discover your kitchen trashed and all your food eaten? Honey, Mum's patronizing tone, which I loathed. Kayla isn't used to living independently. These skills are new to her. Never before has she had to care for herself. I walked my living room, stepping over Kayla's shoes, astonished. She's an adult, Mum. She should know dishwashing. These aren't difficult skills. This is politeness. You're hostess, Madison. You must host and care for guests. Your attitude, I didn't raise you like this. I taught you kindness, especially to family. My mother's lectures on hospitality and family duty reminded me of the constant disrespect I'd been receiving at home. The wine stains on my carpet from Kayla's romantic dinner finally snapped me out of my frustration. What, Mom? I stopped her mid-sentence, my voice increasing with each syllable. I'm done explaining this. I'm tired of being responsible, understanding and accommodating. I'm so sick of Kayla acting like a pig in my house. I inhaled and exploded. After saying those words, I heard a small gasp behind me, and my stomach dropped as I slowly turned around to see Kayla standing in the doorway, her face pale and her eyes wide. She must have come back to get something and heard everything. Her face made my anger fade and guilt wash over me. I started, Kayla, but she turned away. Madison, what's up? My mum's voice was still on the phone, but I barely heard her. I watched, frozen in place, as Kayla walked straight to her room. I could hear her opening drawers and moving around. Within minutes, though it felt like hours, she emerged with her suitcases, the same ones she'd brought 2 weeks earlier. She didn't look at me or say a word. I held my phone in the solitude, my mother's voice a murmur, and hung up without saying goodbye.